Welcome to Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater.
Welcome to the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. We know it, the election time is here. Some of you maybe even have started voting already. There's absentee voting going on, and of course the election is November 5th. Here at KCHF TV, we're proud to invite many candidates. Those who have accepted are on our program, and I'm so glad we're going to have Natalie Figueroa. She is a candidate for Senate District 18 here in Bernalillo County in Albuquerque. And I'll clarify again, we can't invite every single candidate, but if they have an opponent, we invite them, and if they have some connection to Bernalillo County. That was our restriction. We have dedicated these programs to those who touch Bernalillo County, as Natalie has, and she hopes to in the future. So please stay with us as we welcome Natalie Figueroa right after this. My guest today is Senate candidate for District 18, Natalie Figueroa. Now, she's got a really long resume. You can find it online. But one of the things that stuck out with me is that she has volunteered the Asbury Pie Cafe at the State Fair. Welcome to the program, Natalie. I thought that would get a chuckle out of you, but that's one reason I go to the fair.
That's the reason I go as well.
You've been a member of that congregation for quite a while.
Yes, for 22 years.
Drop of a hat.
Drop of a hat. But one of the reasons we became members was because of the Pie Cafe and the work they do. I like to be part of a community that puts their faith into action.
What do they do?
Well, we pick fruit for constituents, for people across the city who call the church and say, we have a fruit tree in our yard, we're not using the fruit, you can have it for the Pie Cafe. We go out and pick fruit, we process it, we make pies all summer long and freeze them unbaked, and then while the fair is in session, we bake pies every day for the next day to serve at the fair. And this is literally 2,000 pies, Diane.
And where does the money go to?
It goes to food banks all across Albuquerque. And I think this year there are 6 or 7 on the list.
Well, we have plenty more to talk about, but I've gone every year, and my favorite is the strawberry rhubarb, or just rhubarb pie. I mean, I can't find that anywhere. And I did not know that your church went and picked the fruit from the trees. I did not know.
We do.
I did not
we
know
also
that.
have to buy fruit because it's so large at this point that we need more than we can pick. But it's a great way for the community to work together.
And that's what you've done in your career. You're a longtime Spanish teacher, over 30 years. You're from Nebraska, got your degree in California, Stanford, no less, and came to New Mexico.
Yes, and found our permanent home here. I always tell my family, many of whom still live back in Nebraska, that once you live in the climate in New Mexico, once you live with the people of New Mexico, you're ruined for anywhere else. So we won't move again. It's true.
It is true. But I don't like telling a lot of people because we have it for ourselves.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I tell everybody. Best climate in the world.
In
is
the
here
world.
in New Mexico. Well, congratulations on your distinguished career as a Spanish teacher, a lot of awards and whatnot, and also as being a state rep since 2018. And now you're running for Senate District 18 as a Democrat.
Correct.
And tell me where that district is. Where is Senate District 18 in Bernalillo County?
That is the northeast heights of Albuquerque, and it's long and essentially vertical. It reaches from San Antonio all the way down to below the 40 freeway into the International District. And from Eubank essentially to Wyoming, but with a lot of jigs and jags.
Because of redistricting.
Of course.
Okay, so what would you like to tell our viewers? I mean, we talked a lot about pies, that's my fault. But what would you like to share with our viewers about yourself and why you're now wanting to change from the House to the Senate?
Well, my senator reached out to me when he was retiring to let me know that he was going to retire and he wanted me to consider running for his seat. And that was difficult for me. I had to consider it for some time because I had developed strong collaborative relationships with many people in the House across both sides of the aisle, and I didn't know if I wanted to move to another chamber. But in the end, I decided to do it because, like teaching, serving in the legislature is extremely challenging and incredibly rewarding. And in the Senate chamber, I could serve more constituents and impact more New Mexicans. So I decided that, in combination with those strong relationships, would allow me to hit the ground running in the Senate and be effective immediately.
And that was Democrat Senator Bill Tallman.
Yes.
From Senator 18.
Correct.
To take his seat.
Yes.
How is the campaign going? Of course, it's gone. It's gone. I should say it's
Yes,
gone.
it's
Election is here.
gone. It's gone. It's moving very quickly. And when you're in the thick of it, it's like being in the forest. It's hard to maintain the big picture and really have a sense of how it's going. But talking to people at doors is one of the best parts of campaigning. Fundraising, not so much. But talking to my neighbors at their door and hearing what's important to them reminds me that we all want the same things.
And what are they telling you, Natalie?
They want to be safe. They want to feel safe in their community. They want good schools and opportunities for their children and grandchildren. My district has a lot of older folks, especially in the northern half. And so we talk about their hopes and dreams for their children and grandchildren. We talk about living on a fixed income and how difficult that's become. But we talk about our hopes for New Mexico.
You do a lot of listening. What are you telling them in return about their safety, about living on a fixed income? Mm-hmm. A lot of challenges. Some things the state legislature cannot do, and some things they certainly can do.
Yes, and some we absolutely can. We talk about how to deal with public safety and what that means in terms of funding. I have carried legislation in conjunction with law enforcement because I think if we listen to our law enforcement talk to us about the tools they need to be effective, we get better legislation. So I've carried bills, for example, co-sponsored organized retail crime bill to address that kind of crime that just surged right around the pandemic.
And what did your bill do?
Oh,
and it passed?
It did pass. It was signed into law, and our current DA has used it to prosecute those folks who are running crime rings. They're using folks who are addicted, folks who are vulnerable to go in, and they were stealing up to a misdemeanor amount. They knew exactly $500 was the amount you could steal, and it was still a misdemeanor. And our police force doesn't generally have the capacity to prosecute aggressively misdemeanors. They're working on felony crimes primarily. So what this bill allowed law enforcement to do is to aggregate or build up over time. So if someone did multiple thefts in the same month or 6-month period, it can add up to a felony charge. And it allowed law enforcement to go after folks who were running those rings and literally turning retail theft into billion-dollar industry.
You've been in New Mexico quite a while now.
Yes.
But this crime surge, I think, has shocked many of us. In the list that we are on regarding crime. Mm-hmm. Now, as a constituent, I'm not in your district, but just that's a grave concern I have.
Yes.
Looking, going shopping, sadly, going shopping.
Yes, and that's what the organized retail crime was specifically to address. It was a new kind of crime that did surge in our city. We hadn't seen that before. We had to change legislation and change statute to address it. And legislative change is not swift, but it is essential that it be done and that it be done carefully and thoughtfully with all stakeholders' input. So law enforcement had to weigh in, and our judiciary had to weigh in, because swift justice is often more important than changing, say, the consequences for crimes. If we can get whatever consequences we have enforced more quickly, it has more of an effect.
What else is going on in your district? And in addition to that, let's touch upon their concerns about living on a fixed income. What can the legislature do about that?
We can affect medical care is a huge chunk of anyone's fixed income. So between medical care and housing, they're really feeling pinched. So we have to deal with the increases in housing cost. And for those who are on fixed income, we are looking at legislation. There's an amendment coming up. We got it through the House and the Senate. Voters will vote on it in November. An amendment to help our veterans on fixed incomes so that they can have a tax break, especially if they're disabled, on their property taxes. So I hope folks will read that carefully and consider that when they're voting. And dealing with medical costs and prescription costs in particular, which are just growing out of control. When we passed through the legislature access to drugs from Canada, we dropped a lot of prices. I have a lovely constituent who was paying $175 a month, and her prescriptions dropped to $45. It makes that much of a difference. And another one who had a heart medication that was going to be $900 a month, and we got it down to $140.
And what was the relationship with Canada? They used to get it, or were able to?
We were not able to import drugs from Canada by mail until we passed it through our House and convinced the federal government to agree to it as well. So our federal delegation helped make that happen.
What else are you proud about accomplishments that you worked on in the House?
Collaborating with 8 women in the House of Representatives, we passed the Connect New Mexico Act during the pandemic when we spotlighted the fact that 40% of our state did not have internet that was reliable and fast enough for school. So we are working on that. That is also a slow build out, but it was essential to take those steps and get it started moving. And we created a fund to help match and get money from the federal government.
Very good, congratulations. Yeah. I know, even working at the state capitol, sometimes there wasn't even in our state capitol building and the city of Santa Fe state capitol. There was no internet connection.
There are places in Albuquerque still where it's incredibly slow.
Very good. What would you like to do in the state Senate?
In the state Senate, I want to continue moving forward with broadband expansion. We have issues that are coming up now around right-of-way to move those projects forward. I also think we need to address housing. We still have shortages and out-of-control costs. And we have in New Mexico an unusual capital outlay system. And I don't know if your viewers are familiar with what it is, but it's inefficient. It ties up our dollars in long waiting periods, and I think we can do better.
So you'd like to work on that?
Yes.
And we have a lot of capital outlay thanks to the oil and gas industry.
Yes.
A lot of money, and that industry funds our schools, funds your salary.
We have a lot of money coming in.
A lot of money coming in.
And we need to use it wisely because it comes and goes. It doesn't come in steady. So while we have it, we have to look at our major infrastructure projects. And that's difficult because every state in the country is doing it right now, and we're competing for construction crews and equipment and supplies. But still, that is a good use of boom money. To build the schools, to build the dams, to build the roads that will last us another 50 years.
Do you have any infrastructure needs in District 18 in the Northeast Heights of Albuquerque?
Oh, we always have infrastructure needs, but they range from the small, like I need a splash pad in my park, to larger. We have roads that haven't been redone in a while in Senate District 18 that need to be revisited. So all kinds of infrastructure is always needed.
Regarding creating jobs, New Mexico's lagging behind when we create new jobs.
Mm-hmm. We have created many in the last few years, but we're going to do better if we create in diverse fields. So we have strengths in some limited manufacturing. A lot of manufacturing takes water, so we have to be careful with those kinds of jobs. But we have several big tech industries in the state that are growing and creating jobs, so we need to build on that. And biotech has opened up as a niche in which New Mexico is attractive.
Tell me a little bit about that, Natalie.
Well, there are several material science engineers who are working at tiny molecular levels to build things. Yes, I know.
Okay, thank you.
The
Better
things
you
you learn.
explain it than me.
The
Okay.
things you learn as a legislator. But they can do that work in New Mexico. And because of our labs, we have a lot of the right brains and education here to do that kind of work.
You worked on transparency and ethics in the state legislature as a House representative.
I do. That is important to me. When I was first elected, going back to capital outlay, I could not see as a constituent, as a New Mexican, I could not see who was spending what exactly in capital outlay. So making that more transparent so everyone can see what I as a legislator am allocating tax dollars to is important.
I think it's on the Sunshine Portal, and
yes,
I remember
it is now.
Former Senator Sandra Rue from the west side worked on getting the Sunshine Portal, and I recall putting capital outlay.
Getting capital outlay up and published there.
Up and published there.
Yes, I think it's important. I also think that New Mexico should have open primaries. Over more than 60 of our 112 legislative races have no opponent or are in districts where it's essentially decided already. Decisions are made in primaries, and we have tremendous numbers of folks who are declined to state or independent voters.
So they don't get a chance to vote.
Yes, yes. And we adjusted that so that they could change their registration day of primary. But really, we just need to make it open so they can choose a ballot and vote. More than 40% of our veterans are declined to state because they see their service as nonpartisan. They serve for their country. So when they register to vote, they don't necessarily want to be partisan, but we don't want to shut them out of elections. And our younger folks, the 18 to 34 age group, are registering to vote as declined to state. That is the majority of registrations in that age group. And we want them to be involved in our democracy, right? We want them involved in citizenship. We need to open primaries so they can vote in those.
Well, Natalie Figueroa is running for Senate District 18 as a Democrat. What's the possibility of having that happen?
I think we're getting close. It moved through several steps in the last session. So we'll carry it again, and I think it's quite likely. Redistricting, truly independent redistricting, is also something I carry as part of government transparency and good government.
Now that bill did pass. We do have an independent redistricting committee.
We do.
Whereas in the past it was the legislature who
Correct.
and that's why we have all this kind of gerrymandering around. And
we do. And now with the independent committee, which was also a bill I fought for and carried, we have an independent group with a lot of public input building those maps, but it still comes back to the legislators, and legislators then can change it. And a truly independent commission, they would make the maps and the legislators would not get to fiddle with them.
But we don't have that at this point.
We don't have that at this point.
I think oftentimes it goes to the courts to help draw some of the maps as well.
It can.
Regarding the environment, you understand the importance of preserving our natural resources, which we are fortunate to have here.
Yes.
And I
New
know
Mexico
there's
is
discussion
blessed.
of our oil and gas industry is huge. It's been feeding our state government with billions of dollars, and our schools. That's one of our natural resources, as well as water.
Yes, yes.
So what would you like to see happen with the oil and gas industry and with our water?
With our water, we have to take care of the water because it is a limited resource. It is not infinite. So in terms of, as we discussed, industry that we can bring to the state, in terms of development, we have to carefully plan out strategic water use. Agriculture is one of our major industries, and that's heavy water use too. All of the folks in that industry are very concerned about how we manage water in this state. And that's what it comes down to, management. It's management of natural resources. Same could be said of our oil and gas. We have to manage these things to maximize the income for New Mexicans.
Regarding back to water, if you know, because you're on the committee and you're studying this natural resource, I understand Palm Springs, talking about Palm Springs, it's lush and green, the golf courses, the palm trees, and they say they have huge aquifers that will last generations. Palm Springs. What do you know, or what can you tell our viewers about, because I hear different, oh, we have oh, we're running out of water. No, we have a lot of aquifers. What is the situation of water in Albuquerque?
We have an aquifer, but we are using it at a rapid rate. So we have to pay attention to that, keep track of it, and make sure that we don't consider it infinite. We can't build like we have infinite water.
We see a lot of building of these apartments around infill, right, around the city.
That's the balance, right? We have a shortage of housing in this state, across the state, a shortage especially of affordable housing. So if we want to build housing, how can we do it in a way that minimizes water use? That's what we have to balance.
That's the challenge. We have a few minutes left to perhaps talk about one of the biggest topics, and one that you have the greatest experience in is education. Almost half of our, what is it, $12 billion budget now?
Yes.
12 billion?
Well, nine point something.
Nearly half goes to education.
Yes.
And the resource of our children for the future is critical. Share with me your thoughts about our education. And I've worked in state government. I had worked for nearly 30 years, and money goes, but the numbers are not changing. There's not the improvement. The children cannot read.
Yes.
They can't do math. And now with the internet and computers, and I'm doing this, they can't add, they can't write, and they can't talk.
Well,
they can compute, though.
That's one of the reasons I enjoy being a Spanish teacher, because we get to practice that speaking, that reading, literacy issues in 2 languages are actually one of the benefits we have in New Mexico that we need to leverage more. Multilingualism in our students, if we can support and grow, will be good for our economy, good for their brains, and good long-term for New Mexico. So that is an advantage we start with that we don't necessarily maximize in our education system. I'd like to see that change. But one of the reasons I originally ran was to bring on the grounds, in classroom expertise to the State House when they're making policy decisions. One that is really important that we have done is strategically focus on early childhood. Because what we found, Diane, was that students are entering kindergarten in New Mexico already 1.5 to 2.5 years behind their peers. And that in part is due to the massive poverty. We have 40% of those kindergartners entering from homes in poverty. And that affects their choices and their opportunities. So focusing resources, those dollars you talk about, spending and spending and spending, the bang for the buck that we get when we spend it early is triple to 10 times, depending on what you look at, in terms of effect for our children and families.
But we are doing that.
But we are doing it.
Early childhood, what
does
it start at 3 years old? What, 4?
But parent home visits can start when a baby is newborn. And that process of helping families learn how to read to children and play with children in ways that develops their brain, support families who are struggling, because we raise children the way we were raised, and if you're in a cycle that wasn't great,
maybe
that's
it wasn't
difficult to break. So investing early, it's going to take us years to see the results of that. We're starting to in some of our 3rd grade testing, but it will take a long commitment over time. And we have to stay committed to that course to support our children. For me to see the results in my high school classroom, we're going to stay committed for another 10 years at least.
The early childhood is the biggest bang for the buck. And teaching parents how to play with their children.
Yes.
In ways that affect their brain and educate their brain.
It's essential.
Not just handing the children a little tablet. I saw a little baby just the other day, couldn't hold the mom's hand walking up the stairs because they're gripping onto a tablet.
Yes. I have seen a 2-year-old, I suspect, It's amazing what they learn, because swiping and managing that iPad more effectively than my mother can, at age 2, they can learn anything. So that's the time to reach them.
We have just a couple of minutes left, Natalie Figueroa. What would you like to share about yourself and about education and your hopes?
I would share that my career in education has been to make a difference, because I believe education is the springboard to a thriving, successful life for New Mexicans, and every New Mexican deserves it. All of our children deserve the best we can give them. And that is my hope as a senator and as a continuing classroom teacher.
Very good. And regarding the crime, we have hope. I understand people are moving out of our state. They say, the crime is the issue to move out. Even though we have this glorious weather,
yes,
they're packing their bags, they're packing their houses and leaving. What do you say about that?
The trend is turning. It's reducing, especially violent crime in the state is coming down, but it's too slow. I think we need to fully fund our judiciary so justice is swift and we move through cases more quickly. We also need to supply the supports that folks need to have an alternative choice.
What do you mean by that, alternative choice?
Job training, and if the issue is addiction, we don't have youth residential treatments sufficient to the need in our state. And if addiction is driving criminal activity, which not in all cases, but in some it is, we've got to address it.
We've got to. Or we'll be packing our bags and leaving. And we don't want to go.
No, we
want
don't.
to stay. Natalie Figueroa, Democrat running for Senate District 18, Northeast Heights of Albuquerque. Thank you so much for taking time to be on this program and for educating our students over in Volcano Vista.
Correct. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Thanks for watching this program, and we appreciate KCHF TV for bringing you Issues and Answers and these candidates who are running for our benefit to improve our state. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinnewater is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program or to purchase a copy of any Issues and Answers program, visit sunbroadcasting.org or call us at 505-345-1991.